conversation about anti-Semitism after Ken Livingstone gave evidence at a hearing in the House of Commons yesterday, talking about his comments where he was accused of anti-Semitism and racism. He says, if I'd said that Hitler was a Zionist, I would apologise for that because it's rubbish. However, back in April, during a radio interview, he was suspended from the Labour Party as a result of saying, let's remember, when Hitler won his election in 1932, his policy then was that Jews should be moved to Israel. He was supporting Zionism. This was before he went mad and ended up killing 6 million Jews. Now, Ken Livingstone has refused to apologise. He says he didn't say anything wrong. What he said is historically, factually correct. He also says you have to be Jewish to be a Zionist, so he never called Hitler himself a Zionist. And he says the whole thing is a smear and a conspiracy by embittered old Blairites, his words, not mine, against himself and Jeremy Corbyn and the rest of the Labour leadership. Let's put all of that now to the President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, Jonathan Arkush, who kindly joins us now on Talk Radio. Jonathan, first of all, should Ken Livingstone have apologised to the committee yesterday?
Absolutely he should. I really think, and having heard what he said to you just before, I think he's absolutely lost the plot completely. Look, as I told the committee yesterday, and Ken Livingstone was sitting behind me, I produced pieces from respected historians that completely expose Livingstone's suggestion that Hitler was some sort of Zionist as a historical lie. Livingstone relies on someone called Lenny Brenner, a Marxist who tried to write a history book with his political axe to grind. And what that history suggests is a lie. Ken Livingstone knows it's a lie, but he still peddles his offensive nonsense. And if he shouldn't apologise for that and retract it, I really don't know what planet he's on.
He keeps referring to this Havara agreement. I think most people, frankly, were totally unaware of this thing. But the argument is that, look, this wasn't about Nazis being Zionists and helping the Jewish people. This was quite simply a way of removing Jews. It was one of the ideas tried by Hitler to remove Jews from Germany. Is that correct?
Not really.
No.
Jews were trapped in Germany under the Nazis. They were being taken even before the war to concentration camps. They were being treated abominably. People were being beaten on the streets. Jewish leaders wanted desperately to get women, children, men, anyone they could out. And to a very limited extent and for a very short time, German officials were prepared to let some Jews out. Now, anyone trapped under the Nazis, being brutalised as Jews were in the 1930s, would have done exactly the same. And how that makes Hitler some sort of supporter of Zionism escapes me. And moreover, if you read Hitler's own words in his book Mein Kampf,
written many years earlier,
1925, but of course he never changed his views. He never, as Ken Livingstone likes to put it, went mad. He was always of this desperately evil mind. Hitler makes it clear that the Jewish people were what he called a pestilence. He called their national wishes for a homeland absolutely unacceptable and as a means of trying to dominate the world. So once again, Ken Livingstone stands condemned if he only read the person who he thinks was some sort of Zionist.
So if we ask 1,000 historians of this era about this, there's only one who would agree with Ken Livingstone, you're saying?
Well, I don't even call Lenny Brenner a reputable historian.
Okay. In terms of the evidence that you gave yesterday, we know that Labour MP John Mann, we saw it on film, is accused Ken Livingstone of being a disgusting racist and a Nazi apologist when we saw it back in April. Do you think that Ken Livingstone is a Nazi apologist and a racist?
Well, I think Ken Livingstone has said things which are anti-Semitic, unquestionably. I've said it and I'll keep on saying it, and I've explained just now the reasons for saying it.
Do you think that this is going to have a long-term effect in terms of we were discussing with Richard Angel, actually, from Progress, who's a Labour Party member, as well, about the idea that this opens it up, it creates a sort of a safe space for people to express unpleasant, nasty, often even outright racist views about Jewish people living in Britain?
Yes, look, I believe in free speech, but I don't believe in being able to propagate racist filth. And as I said yesterday, anyone who does this, and now Ken Livingstone, whatever he thought in April, he now knows very clearly that what he was talking was racist filth. He should now go back and say, having now read the evidence, I was clearly wrong. He won't say that, and therefore, to me, anyone like him should be treated like a political pariah, and that's what I think he is.
Can you explain to me the difference between calling someone a Zionist and saying someone supported Zionism? It's beyond my tiny brain, I'm afraid, to see the difference. And is it right, as Ken Livingstone claims, that you can only be a Zionist if you're Jewish?
Well, I just don't get that at all. Look, Zionism is no more and no less than the belief in the Jewish people's right of self-determination. The right of self-determination is a right in the UN Charter. It's as simple as that. People who say that everyone should have a right of self-determination, because presumably they uphold the right in the UN Charter, but that Jews uniquely should not have that right, we say is anti-Semitic. So Ken Livingstone's attempt to portray Zionists as some sort of oddity is in itself extremely puzzling and disturbing. And to say that you have to be Jewish to be a Zionist is like saying that, you have to be Jewish to enjoy a salt beef sandwich.
I live in an area in North London, a very large Jewish population, and a number of Jewish people have said to me that they are beginning to feel that there is a tide has turned, and that something which they thought had gone away, anti-Semitism as a sort of a normal part of discourse in the country, that is coming back, and they feel afraid. We know in France, many Jewish people in France have actually been leaving in huge numbers actually to go to Israel, saying they no longer feel safe. Do you fear that especially with the right-wing groups rising up, extremist groups in France and elsewhere in European mainland, the Jewish people no longer feel welcome in this country?
No, I don't feel that. This country is a far better place on that score, as in many others, than France. I do feel that, as someone famously said, anti-Semitism is a light sleeper. And it worries me, of course, as the leader of a Jewish community, when I see things being said, including by some people who have positions in the Labour Party, that are very, very obviously anti-Semitic, like some of those people who've been expelled from the Labour Party for saying things like Jews have big noses or finance the slave trade or calumnies like that. I am heartened, however, that we have the Home Affairs Select Committee wanting to look at this because they want to express their own views. They were clearly pretty unimpressed with Ken Livingstone yesterday. They regarded his evidence as unconvincing. I'm encouraged that the Labour Party has set up the Shami Chakrabarti inquiry, and I therefore would like to be hopeful that it'll bring us to a better place and will help to address some of the anti-Semitism that people have recently felt they could say publicly, but really shouldn't be there at all. Can
I ask you just finally, there's often these comments made by Jeremy Corbyn and other members of the Labour leadership. They talk about anti-Semitism and racism. Now, this is always... I've been in an eye of a storm this week over my right to choose the words I want and other people's right to choose their words they want, and I absolutely support that. However, when someone says anti-Semitism and racism, it's always felt very strange to me, because it seems to me anti-Semitism is clearly racism. Why would people feel the need to separate the two?
Well, they shouldn't. Anti-Semitism is a particular form of racism and is plain and simple. Any prejudice or attack on a group of people for what they are as a result of their racial origins is racism. Anti-Semitism is one type of racism. It has its own set of behaviours, just like racism in other regards have their own set of behaviours. But I agree with you, Julia.
And what do you want to happen now? Ken Livingstone still suspended from the Labour Party. We're talking about some advice being given by Progress to the Labour Party on how to tackle anti-Semitism. What needs to happen now?
What needs to happen now is that Ken Livingstone goes through the disciplinary process that the Labour Party is to set up for him and others like him, Ken Livingstone should be expelled from the Labour Party. If the Labour Party was to decide not to expel him and have him as a member, I would be extremely concerned, as would almost everyone in the Jewish community, many of whom are Labour Party members and have strong and deep ties with Labour. And I think it would pretty much complete the disenchantment of the Jewish community with the Labour Party if they didn't throw him out once and for all.
Jonathan Arkush, thank you very much for joining us. He's President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews. Very much appreciate your time talking to us here at Talk Radio. Coming up.